From Twitter rage to an actual lawsuit threat, James Gunn is under fire. While most people are excited about Gunn taking the reins of the DC film franchise, others aren't. And it all comes down to a certain Henry Cavill. See, about 10 years ago, boy, time flies, Warner Brothers kicked off their competitor to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Extended Universe. They kicked off the franchise with the release of Man of Steel. In this movie, our favorite Kryptonian hero was portrayed by Henry Cavill, who, by the way, was the perfect casting choice. Unfortunately, Zack Snyder's take on Superman was broadly unpopular. As the DC Extended Universe continued, Snyder received stronger and stronger backlash. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice was considered one of the worst superhero movies of all time until it got dethroned by Suicide Squad.
Black and blue. God versus man.
Justice League, meanwhile, was a mess of Snyder's vision, Joss Whedon's vision, and studio interference. But while these movies were generally received poorly, there was a growing core of fans. These were diehards for the DCEU, or Snyderverse if you prefer, and would turn up to see every movie. They helped the franchise keep limping on, even as it lost its Batman and was on the verge of losing its Superman. Things changed with last year's Black Adam movie, which showed some serious promise.
You can be its savior.
And its electrifying star, Dwayne Johnson, used his star power to make the impossible happen. The post-credits scene finally cemented the fate of Henry Cavill. He was back, folks.
Black Adam. We should talk.
Unfortunately, he was out of the franchise again by the end of the year, and this time it's permanent. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what happened here. In short, it was typical Warner Brothers shenanigans. As you know, James Gunn has been given the keys to the DC Comics kingdom. The decision to restructure the DC Films division into its own studio wasn't made overnight. While the announcements came at the end of 2022, things were happening behind the scenes long before then. The crazy thing is, Warner tried so hard to keep things on the DL that they didn't bother anyone making DC movies about it. That is why Black Adam had that post-credits scene heralding the return of Superman. No one, from that movie's director to Dwayne Johnson to Henry Cavill, knew what James Gunn and the gang were cooking. This bait and switch against Cavill has attracted a lot of backlash from those Snyderverse fans, and the fan base has set their sights on James Gunn. Despite Gunn firing off on Warner for their treatment of Cavill, this group is holding him responsible for the situation. They also consider his creation of the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker a deception. Like, why would you continue a franchise if he was just going to destroy it later on? Twitter is ringing with the sounds of people calling Gunn a liar in the Henry Cavill situation. Now, Twitter happens to be a great place to get a response from the director. He's pretty active there and responds to questions and rumors all the time. He ain't the sort of person to mince words either. It's no wonder that he responded to these accusations of him being a liar. He stated in no uncertain terms that he would never lie to anyone, least of all the fans. Regarding the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, he clarified that he was offered Superman at the time but chose these projects instead. Things are different now though, so he's taken on this new role as the head of DC Studios. He stated one more time that he wouldn't lie, but he isn't interested in censoring his thoughts for the sake of the internet. You won't be surprised to hear that this response wasn't good enough for the mob. In fact, some of these fans have considered taking matters off Twitter and into the courts. That's right, the courts, with a judge and everything. A certain incendiary faction of Snyderverse fans believes, unironically, that they have a case against Gunn here. They've acknowledged that Henry Cavill isn't going to fight for himself, but they're happy to do it for him. What exactly is the charge here? Well, they believe that putting Henry Cavill in the post-credits scene of Black Adam constitutes false advertising. Apparently, putting a character in a post-credits scene legally obligates you to use them. If that were true, Marvel Studios would have a lot to answer for. Where's my Harry Styles movie, Feige? On a serious note, if the fans were to start a class action suit against Warner, would they have a leg to stand on? Actually, they just might. This whole lawsuit was inspired by the hot water Universal Studios is in right now. Do you remember that romantic comedy from 2019? It was a pretty decent feel-good movie. You could give it a go, but let me be clear, Ana de Armas is not in the movie. I have to make that clear because the trailers for the movie showed many scenes of the A-list actress. Connor Wolfe and Peter Michael Rosa were two guys who decided to watch the movie on Amazon Prime. They were pretty disappointed to find that de Armas was cut from the final movie. In a pretty ballsy move, they decided to sue Universal Studios, and the judge actually decided to put the case on the docket. This was in spite of Universal's argument that a trailer is an artistic, expressive work that is protected by the First Amendment. The judge's counter-argument there was that the creative nature of a trailer is outweighed by its commercial nature. Its main purpose, he ruled, is to advertise a movie by showing a slice of it. Wolfe and Rosa are seeking $5 million from this lawsuit. If they win, it'd be a real game changer for movie trailers. How many times have we been misled by a trailer creating empty hype? We might finally be liberated from that scourge. Back to the DC universe though. Is there any connective tissue linking this case to this hypothetical Henry Cavill case? I guess we have to ask ourselves what exactly a post-credits scene is. While lots of movies in the past had scenes after the credits, it was Marvel that kinda made them an industry standard. These days, if you're watching a capes and spandex movie, you know well enough not to leave before the credits wrap up. Across all the Marvel movies and DC movies, there are tons of post-credits scenes. But for the purposes of using the Yesterday suit to drag Warner Brothers and James Gunn into court, there's only one question to ask. Is a post-credits scene the same thing as a trailer? In a sense, you could argue that they're the same thing. After all, when Nick Fury talks about the Avengers Initiative in the Iron Man post-credits, is that not a harbinger for the Avengers movie? Or, for a more recent example, when Fury drops his pager at the end of Infinity War, was that not a signal for the Captain Marvel movie? But the key difference between a trailer and a post-credits scene is audience expectations. Through centuries of filmmaking, we've come to expect that a trailer will be made up of scenes and shots in a movie. Trailers are honest-to-goodness samples of what the movie has to offer. Post-credit scenes, meanwhile, tell you what's coming next, but they're not supposed to be representative of the finished product. So this case wouldn't work out for the fans. That's all the news I have for you today in the war between the Snyderverse and James Gunn.